former police officer bought government software for 350,000 and then billed the government 458 million for that same software. Then he shut the entire police service down overnight when someone tried to stop him. And that is less than 1% of the total story. The alleged total is 50 billion rand from one man, one trust, 20 years.
This is a mayday call and the last radio call for a general in the South African Police Service, whom we believe was assassinated, whom the forensic evidence that was found after a court-ordered exhumation said that he was poisoned with castor resin.
Let us meet the cast. There is Keating, former SAPS employee turned businessman, owner of a company called Forensic Data Analysts, FDA, which he controls through the Keating Family Trust. There is Lt General Sindile Mfazi, the Deputy National Commissioner for Crime Detection, the man who finally looked at the numbers and said no, and who was subsequently murdered. There is Lt Richardson, the forensic investigator who followed the paper trail and documented what she found in a sworn affidavit. Is Lt General Phala, then National Commissioner, who confirmed 458 million in SAPS payments to FDA in a formal communication to Parliament's Scopa Committee. And there is President Cyril Ramaphosa, whose name appears later in the story, in a context that will make you set your phone down. But first, the systems, because nothing that follows makes sense until you understand what these three systems actually are. Every gun in South Africa, every license, every serial number, every registration record. The system that answers the question, was this weapon used in a previous crime? Was it reported stolen before it turned up at the murder scene? Is this ballistically connected to another case? Without the FPS, gun crime investigation in South Africa collapses. You cannot track a weapon. You cannot build a ballistics case. You cannot connect a firearm to a pattern of violence. The FPS is the entire National Gun Intelligence Database. It was sitting in the hands of one private company. The digital chain of custody for every piece of evidence in every criminal case in the country, every forensic sample, every exhibit, every item collected at the crime scene. The integrity of all it depends on an unbroken documentation trail. The PCEM is that trail. Without it, evidence can be lost, manipulated, or substituted with no reliable record of what happened. Cases collapse, convictions fail, murderers walk. That system was also controlled by one private company. The tool that links organized crime across provinces, the system that lets investigators look past deliberate fragmentation and see the pattern. A drug syndicate operating across Durban, Johannesburg and Cape Town looks like three unconnected incidents without VAAMIS. With it, investigators can see the same network. Without it, fighting organized crime in South Africa becomes, in the words of the investigators, impossible. Also controlled by the same private company. All three, one company, one trust. The investigators put it plainly: whoever controls these systems control the SAPS. The firearm permit system was not built by FDA. It was not built by Keating. It was built with the government money. The Industrial Development Corporation, a government institution, funded a company called Agri-Venture Capital Fund to develop the FPS software. Government money, government development, and the shareholder agreement between the IDC and Agri-Venture explicitly prohibited Agri-Venture from selling the software to anyone. This was not a grey area. The software could not legally be sold. The FDA bought it for 350,000. Richardson's forensic investigation found the sale was unlawful. Government-funded software legally unsellable, acquired through a transaction investigators described as unlawful, for 350,000 rand. FDA then billed SAPS 458 million for it. That markup is more than 1,300 times, and the 450 million figure does not come from the investigation alone. It comes from the National Commissioner's own formal communication to Parliament. The police confirmed it themselves. 458 million for software the government essentially already owned, and that 458 million is less than 1% of the 50 billion rand total. In 2018, Lt General Mfazi walked into the SAPS head office and looked at 20 years of FDA contracts. He asked the questions nobody before him had apparently been willing to ask. How did this company get these contracts? Is this arrangement lawful? Is any of this money being spent appropriately? He looked at the numbers and concluded that what he was looking at was corruption. Then he did something that apparently nobody with authority had done in 20 years. He stopped the payments. No review meeting, no 18-month audit process, no report that would gather dust. He stopped the payments and launched a formal investigation. He assembled a team that included Richardson with specialist IT forensics experience to follow the paper trail through the software systems. 20 years of payments stopped by one general. In 2018, FDA's response came within 24 hours. On 4th April 2018, FDA issued a notice of termination of services. On 5th April 2018, FDA shut all of 3 systems: the Firearm Permit System, DAC, the Property Control and Exhibit Management System, DAC, the VA-AMIS, DAC, all 3 simultaneously overnight. Let us be precise about what that meant. Gun tracking gone. In a country where illegal firearms kill 10,000s of people every year, the database for tracking weapons was switched off because a private businessman was in a payment dispute. Evidence chain records disrupted. Every active criminal case with evidence stored in PCEM suddenly existed in a state of digital uncertainty. Organized crime intelligence links severed. Every cross-provincial investigation relying on VA-AMIS to build a picture of criminal networks suddenly operating in the dark, not because of a cyber attack, not because of a server failure, because Keating turned it off. That is not a service provider terminating a contract. That is a demonstration of ownership. It is the moment a private citizen revealed that he held a kill switch for South Africa's criminal justice infrastructure and that he was willing to use it. And when a private citizen can switch off the police, the question of who actually runs the state has a very uncomfortable answer. 450 million is one system, one contract. The Keating Family Trust owns multiple companies. Each of those companies had its own SAPS contracts. Each contract was its own revenue stream flowing from the police budget into the same beneficial ownership structure across all 3 systems and all connected companies over 20 years. The figure investigators arrived at is 50 billion rand. The entire annual SAPS budget is approximately 100 billion rand per year. This cartel allegedly extracted the equivalent of half a year's entire police budget over 20 years. Half a year's budget gone. And here is the part that is worse than the money. If you control the evidence management system, you influence what evidence exists and how it is stored. You influence which cases have unbroken chains and which do not. If you control the intelligence system, you influence what patterns investigators can see and which ones they cannot. You are not just extracting money from a state institution, you are shaping what the institution can know, what it can prove, and what it can prosecute. For 20 years, the digital infrastructure that determines what South African law enforcement can see was controlled by one private trust. That is the real cost. Not 50 billion rand, the murders that were not solved, the syndicates that were not dismantled, the victims who did not get justice. That cost is incalculable. Mfazi saw all of this. He stopped the payments. He launched the investigation. He documented what he found. He was subsequently murdered. He was also investigating Phala at the same time, and nobody has ever been convicted of his murder. And then, after the shutdown, after Mfazi's investigation, after 20 years of payments finally being challenged, President Cyril Ramaphosa allegedly made decisions in favor of FDA's position, decisions that investigators described as illegal. On 30th January 2020, Ramaphosa instructed 3 cabinet ministers, Police Minister Keath, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, and Digital Technologies Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams to go to the presidential guest house in Pretoria and negotiate a settlement with FDA. Ministers personally negotiating tender settlements is a direct violation of the Public Finance Management Act. The instruction came from the president. That meeting produced a verbal agreement. A High Court judge later used that verbal agreement as the basis for a judgment ordering SAPS to pay FDA an additional 768 million. The judge was Sule Potterell. A photograph of Judge Potterell's swearing-in ceremony exists. Ramaphosa is seated in the background, smiling. Software acquired for 350,000, 450 million billed and paid. A presidential rescue meeting when payments were finally stopped. A 768 million court order based on a verbal agreement from that meeting. The general who stopped the payments murdered. Total alleged looting across 20 years, 50 billion rand. And the second interim report of the Madlanga Commission, the body investigating all of this, is scheduled to be submitted to President Ramaphosa on the 29th May 2026. The report goes to the men the evidence implicates. Whether that changes anything, that is a story for another video, but the systems that ran this police service were owned by one man for 20 years. South Africa now knows his name.